I never believed in ghosts. Stories, sure, every town has their tales of haunted houses and restless spirits. But I was the kind of person who needed proof. That's what led me, one cold October night, to the old fort on Sentinel Point. Locals swore it was haunted, a relic from the Civil War era where the restless spirit of a soldier still wandered the grounds. It wasn't just idle gossip either. People claimed they'd seen him, an ethereal figure in a tattered uniform, his boots echoing across the crumbling stone corridors. My friends had dared me to spend the night there alone. Armed with nothing but a flashlight, my phone, and a sleeping bag, I accepted the challenge. The fort was isolated, perched on a rocky hill overlooking the dark expanse of the bay. As I approached, the wind howled through the skeletal remains of trees surrounding the structure, their barren branches reaching out like claws. The fort itself was a brooding, oppressive sight. Its stone walls, darkened with age, loomed against the starless sky. The iron gate creaked on rusted hinges as I pushed it open, the sound slicing through the stillness like a knife. Beyond the gate, the courtyard stretched out, littered with fallen stones and overgrown weeds. It smelled of damp earth and decay, as though the ground itself was holding on to the memory of those who had walked here centuries ago. I set up my sleeping bag in what had once been the barracks, a cavernous room with arched ceilings that seemed to swallow the faint beam of my flashlight. The air was heavy, almost suffocating, and each step I took echoed loudly in the empty space. I tried to ignore the strange sensation that I wasn't alone, but my nerves were already beginning to fray. Around midnight, I decided to explore. Armed with my flashlight, I ventured into the deeper recesses of the fort. The corridors were narrow and damp, the walls slick with condensation. Faint graffiti, left by brave, or foolish, visitors over the years, marred the stone. "Beware the soldier," one read in jagged, fading letters. I laughed nervously, but the sound felt out of place in the eerie silence. It was in the eastern wing that I first felt it, a sudden drop in temperature, so sharp it made me gasp. My breath clouded in front of me as I moved cautiously forward. That's when I heard it, the faint but unmistakable sound of boots on stone. I froze. The footsteps were slow and deliberate, echoing from somewhere deeper in the corridor. My rational mind told me it had to be the wind or maybe an animal, but deep down, I knew better. The sound grew louder, closer, until I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No response. I turned a corner and found myself in what appeared to be the old armory. Rusted cannons and fragments of wooden crates littered the room. And then, in the corner, I saw him. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, a shadow cast by my flashlight. But as I stared, the figures took shape. They were tall, dressed in ragged Civil War uniforms, their buttons on their coat glinting faintly in the light. Their faces were pale, almost translucent, and their eyes. They were empty, hollow, as if staring through me rather than at me. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. They didn't answer. Instead, they turned and began walking, their boots making no sound now. Compelled by some mix of terror and curiosity, I followed. They led me back through the narrow corridor, past the courtyard, and toward the western wall. When they stopped, I realized we were standing in front of a sealed door. The heavy wooden planks were reinforced with rusted iron, and a large padlock hung from the latch. The soldiers turned to me then, raising one skeletal hand to point at the door. Their expression was impossible to read, but there was something pleading in their gesture. "I don't understand," I said, my voice trembling. Before I could say another word, they vanished. One moment they were there, solid and real, and the next, the space was empty, the air suddenly warmer. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing. What was behind that door? Why had he led me here? Summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I approached the door and tugged at the padlock. It didn't budge. Frustrated, I shone my flashlight around, searching for something I could use to break it open. That's when I saw it, an inscription carved into the stone wall beside the door. The letters were faint, worn down by time, but I could still make them out. "Here lies Captain Eli Grayson. May his sins remain buried." The realization hit me like a thunderclap. The ghost wasn't just any soldier, he was the captain of the fort, and whatever was behind that door was tied to him. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the courtyard, my back pressed against the cold stone wall, clutching my flashlight like a lifeline. Every creak of the fort, every whisper of wind, set my nerves on edge. I half expected the ghost to return, but he didn't. When the first rays of sunlight finally broke over the horizon, I fled. I didn't stop until I was back in town, safe among the living. I later learned that Captain Grayson was a controversial figure, accused of betraying his own men during a pivotal battle. Some say he sold out the fort for gold, leading to the deaths of dozens of soldiers. The townspeople sealed his body, and his ill-gotten treasure, behind that door, hoping to erase his memory. But he hadn't forgotten, and now, neither can I. Today I can't shake the image of him standing in that dark corridor, his hollow eyes fixed on me. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the faint echo of boots on stone and wonder if he's still waiting for someone brave, or foolish, enough to open that door. If you like this video, a thumbs up is always appreciated. And by subscribing to the channel, you help support the creation of more videos just like this one, real short scary stories, disturbing short horror stories.